Look around you. Look closely at the battles you are fighting every single day. The relentless friction with your colleagues, the exhausting pursuit of wealth, the desperate craving for respect, the quiet, gnawing anxieties that keep your eyes wide open at 3 a.m. You believe these are external problems. You believe you are at war with the world, swinging your sword against circumstances, against enemies, against bad luck. This is the greatest, most devastating illusion of human existence, and it is the very trap that keeps you powerless. Welcome to the labyrinth of your own design. You are trapped in a prison where the bars are made of your unexamined thoughts, and the warden is your own unconscious mind. You have spent your entire life trying to manipulate the reflections in the mirror, entirely forgetting that you are the one casting the image. You desperately wipe at the glass, trying to change the expression of the face staring back at you, exhausting yourself in a futile, maddening effort. The harder you try to bend the external world to your will without first conquering your inner domain, the more the world resists, mocks, and ultimately breaks you. This is the hook. This is the trap. The belief that power lies out there. Society, culture, and your own fragile ego have conspired to teach you a lethal lie, that to be a master of your destiny, you must conquer the external landscape. You are told to hustle harder, to speak louder, to outmaneuver your rivals on the grand chessboard of life. So, you build your strategies, you amass your wealth, you put on your armor and march into the fray. Yet, despite your victories, a hollow echo reverberates in your chest. The anxiety never truly dissipates. The people around you still trigger uncontrollable rage or paralyzing insecurity. The empires you build feel as fragile as glass. Why? Because you are a king sitting on a rotting throne, commanding an army of phantoms. You are ruling a kingdom built on a fault line of unresolved psychological debris. Carl Jung, the legendary architect of the deep psyche, observed humanity's desperate thrashing and distilled the ultimate, ruthless principle of power into one chilling sentence. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Read those words again. Let them sink into the marrow of your bones. They are not merely a psychological observation, they are a death sentence to the victim mentality and the ultimate key to absolute sovereignty. Your fate. The recurring betrayals, the chronic financial ceilings you cannot break, the toxic relationships you repeatedly attract, the sudden self-sabotage just as victory is within reach, is not the universe punishing you. It is not bad luck. It is not the fault of the economy, your parents, or your enemies. It is your own unconscious mind, a vast, dark, and unimaginably powerful leviathan, pulling the strings from the abyss. The unconscious does not speak in words, it speaks in events. It projects its unresolved wounds, its hidden terrors, and its repressed desires onto the canvas of your reality. If you have an unexamined belief that you are unworthy of power, your unconscious will orchestrate 1,000 invisible microbehaviors to ensure you remain subservient. If you harbor a deep-seated fear of abandonment, your inner world will quietly manipulate your reality until you are left alone, standing in the ashes of a relationship you swore to protect. Everything you have not mastered within yourself manifests as an external adversary. You think you are playing chess with the world, but you are playing against the shadows of your own mind. And the shadow always wins, because it knows your next move before you even consciously conceive it. To understand the trap is to realize the horrifying truth of your current existence. You are not the master of your house. You are a guest in a mansion ruled by ghosts. Every time you react with impulsive anger, every time you shrink in fear, every time you chase a superficial desire, you are obeying the commands of an unseen tyrant. You are a biological puppet dancing to the chaotic symphony of your unrecognized psychological drives. But here is the secret that the masters of history, the true sovereigns of reality, have always known. The external world is not a battlefield. It is a feedback loop. It is a flawless, uncompromising mirror reflecting the exact condition of your inner hierarchy. When your inner world is in chaos, when your ego, your shadow, and your desires are at war with one another, your external reality will be a theater of conflict and friction. People will disobey you. Opportunities will slip through your fingers. Chaos will follow you like a faithful hound. But what happens when you turn inward? What happens when you stop swinging your sword at the air and instead descend into the dark, terrifying catacombs of your own psyche? What happens when you drag your deepest fears, your darkest impulses, and your hidden shame into the searing light of conscious awareness? Absolute, terrifying power. When you master your inner world completely, when you subjugate your own psychological demons and bring total, tyrannical order to the kingdom of your mind, a chilling phenomenon occurs. The external world suddenly stops resisting. The friction vanishes. People, circumstances, and events begin to fold to your will with an eerie, almost supernatural obedience. You do not have to force anything. The world simply aligns with the unshakable gravity of your internal resolution. This is not magic. It is the ultimate psychological law. A mind that is completely unified, devoid of internal contradiction, projects a frequency of authority that the external world cannot help but obey. But to achieve this, you must first survive the descent. You must step into the shadows. You must be willing to face the shattered pieces of your own identity. You must look at the trap you have built for yourself, acknowledge the bars of your own cage, and realize that the key has been hidden beneath your tongue the entire time. The time for fighting ghosts is over. The time for outward struggle is finished. The true war, the only war that has ever mattered, is about to begin. Welcome to the abyss. You have been taught to read history as a chronicle of moving bodies, clashing steel, and shifting borders. You have been conditioned to believe that the great empires of antiquity were forged by men who mastered the external world through brute force, cunning treaties, and the sheer weight of armies. This is the great illusion, the lie sold to the masses to keep them forever looking outward, forever distracted by the theater of the physical. Look deeper. Step into the shadowed corridors of time and strip away the noise of the battlefield. What you will find is a chilling, silent truth that Carl Jung understood with terrifying clarity. The external world is nothing but a delayed projection of the internal psyche. History is not a record of physical conquests. It is the macrocosmic display of internal integration. Welcome to the historical pivot. This is the precise moment in the timeline of human power and the exact moment in your own psychological evolution where the gaze shifts. It is the realization that the sovereign who conquers the world without first conquering his own shadow is merely a slave playing dress-up on a throne of matchsticks. Consider the archetype of the medieval king. Picture him seated in the gloom of a great hall, cloaked in charcoal black and deep crimson. Why does this image command such intrinsic, undeniable authority? It is not because of the heavy iron sword resting at his side, nor the patina gold chains draped across his chest. The true weight of the sovereign emanates from his profound stillness. He is the master of the center. He has descended into the chaotic, terrifying depths of his own mind, faced the fragmented demons of his psyche, and forced them into absolute submission. Jung's most ruthless principle dictates that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The masses are entirely consumed by fate. They are buffeted by external circumstances, forever reacting to the weather of the world. But the true sovereign does not react, he dictates. The historical pivot occurs when a ruler realizes that the enemy at the gates is merely a manifestation of the unintegrated shadow within. To wage war externally without achieving internal sovereignty is to fight a hydra, cut off one head and two more arise. But when the inner world is mastered completely, when every dark impulse, Every fear, every fractured piece of the ego is brought to heel under the iron will of your conscious awareness. A terrifying and beautiful phenomenon occurs. Everything obeys. The external world bends to the gravity of a fully integrated mind. This is not mysticism. It is the brutal mechanics of psychological projection. When your internal kingdom is ordered, your every word, action, and micro-expression projects an aura of absolute inevitability. People do not follow the king because they choose to. They follow because the king's internal reality is stronger, denser, and more absolute than their own. They are pulled into his orbit. But this mastery demands a devastating price. To achieve it, the fragile, modern ego must be shattered. Visualize a magnificent marble statue of an ancient philosopher. To the untrained eye, it is perfect, but true power requires the breaking of this superficial perfection. The skull of the statue must crack. The old paradigms, the comforting lies you tell yourself, the victimhood, the desperate need for external validation, all of it must be fractured and ground into dust. The crown of the sovereign is not forged of comfortable gold. It is a crown of thorns, representing the agonizing burden of total self-awareness and absolute responsibility. History's greatest figures, those whose names echo through the millennia, understood this pivot. They treated their minds as the ultimate chessboard. The uninitiated live their lives as pawns, moved by the invisible hands of their own repressed desires and societal conditioning. They look at the board and see a chaotic war of black and white. The sovereign looks at the chessboard and realizes he is not the pawn. He is not the knight. He is not even the king. He is the hand that moves the pieces. He is the board itself. When you master your inner world completely, you realize that the external environment is merely the game board upon which your internal state is rendered visible. If there is chaos in your life, it is because there is a rebellion in your mind. If there is poverty, it is because your psyche is impoverished. If there is betrayal, it is because you have betrayed your own shadow. The historical pivot is the ultimate reclaiming of jurisdiction. It is the moment you stop blaming the map and realize you are the cartographer. As you sit in the quiet darkness of your own existence, surrounded by the metaphorical burning candles and antique bookshelves of your accumulated memories, ask yourself, who sits on the throne of your mind? Is it a fractured, terrified child hiding behind a facade of modern arrogance? Or is it the integrated sovereign, eyes burning with the cold teal light of absolute clarity, holding the reins of the beast? You cannot fake this authority. The world smells the weakness of a divided mind, just as a wolf smells a wounded deer. If your inner world is not mastered, your attempts to control the outer world will always end in tragedy, exhaustion, and ruin. You will build an empire of sand, and the tide of your own unconscious will inevitably rise to wash it away. But if you dare to step into the abyss, if you dare to confront the shattered skulls of your past failures, the ancient coins of your psychological debts, and the terrifying expanse of your own potential, you can forge an iron will. You can integrate the dark, heavy, raw umber of your shadow with the deep crimson of your vitality. When you do this, you cross the historical pivot. You cease to be a victim of history and become its author. You stop fighting the world, and instead, you command it to align with the unshakable architecture of your soul. Master your inner world completely and watch with chilling calmness as everything outside of you falls to its knees. There is a ghost in the machinery of your life, an invisible architect drafting the blueprints of your daily suffering, your repeated failures, and your unexplainable triumphs. You look out into the world and see a landscape of chaotic variables, difficult people, unfair circumstances, sudden misfortunes, and insurmountable walls. You spend your energy fighting these external forces, believing that if you strike the mirror hard enough, the reflection will finally change. This is the grand illusion of the unmastered mind. You are bleeding your energy dry on a battlefield of phantoms. To understand Carl Jung's most ruthless principle is to confront a chilling and absolute truth. There is no out there. There is only in here, projected outward. The hidden mechanism that governs your reality is not fate, nor is it luck, nor is it the malice of others. The hidden mechanism is your own unconscious mind. As Jung so devastatingly articulated, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a literal, mechanical law of psychological physics. What you refuse to master within yourself will inevitably manifest as an external tyrant to rule over you. Imagine the psyche as an ancient, cavernous throne room. At the center sits the throne of conscious will, but the room is vast, filled with dark corners and deep shadows. When you suppress a part of yourself, your aggression, your ambition, your capacity for cruelty, or even your highest potential, you do not destroy it. You merely banish it into the dark. These exiled fragments do not die. They gather in the shadows, forming a mutinous council. Because they are denied a voice in your conscious mind, they seize control of the hidden mechanism. They become the puppet masters of your perception and the silent authors of your actions. This is the psychological phenomenon of projection, the engine room of the hidden mechanism. The mind, desperate to resolve its internal tension, takes its unacknowledged traits and casts them onto the external world like a film onto a blank screen. If you are terrified of your own latent aggression, you will constantly perceive the world as hostile, finding enemies in innocent faces. If you feel deeply unworthy of success, the hidden mechanism will orchestrate brilliant, invisible acts of self-sabotage right at the precipice of your victory. You will blame the economy, a treacherous colleague, or bad luck, never realizing that the call was coming from inside the house. You are the architect of the labyrinth in which you are trapped. Consider the chessboard of your daily existence. You believe you are the king, carefully plotting your moves against an external opponent. But the chilling reality of the hidden mechanism is that you are playing against yourself. The opposing pieces, the obstacles, the betrayals, the sudden reversals of fortune, are moved by your own disowned shadow. When you refuse to integrate your inner darkness, it externalizes itself to force an encounter. The universe will endlessly mirror your unhealed fractures until you finally recognize the face in the glass. Every person who triggers a disproportionate emotional reaction in you is merely a displaced fragment of your own psyche, demanding to be seen. Why is this principle considered ruthless? Because it strips you entirely of the comfort of victimhood. It is a terrifying burden to accept that you are the absolute sovereign of your experience. It is much easier to be a pawn at the mercy of a cruel world than to admit you are the mad king who set his own kingdom ablaze. To accept the hidden mechanism is to accept that every chain binding you was forged in the fires of your own unconscious. You are the prisoner, the warden, and the iron bars. Yet, hidden within this terrifying responsibility is the ultimate key to absolute power. If the unmastered inner world dictates a reality of chaos and limitation, then a completely mastered inner world dictates a reality of obedience and order. When you pull back the projections, when you stop fighting the external holograms and turn your gaze inward to the projector itself, the external world suddenly loses its resistance. The enemies vanish, the insurmountable walls crumble into dust. Mastery requires a descent into the dark academia of your own soul. You must walk into the cavernous throne room with a single candle, seeking out the exiled fragments of your psyche. You must look upon the shattered statues of your past ideals, the broken skulls of your forgotten traumas, and the heavy gold chains of your suppressed desires. You must reclaim your aggression, your fear, your lust, and your grief. You must invite the shadow to sit beside you on the throne, integrating its raw, chaotic power into your conscious will. When you cease to be at war with yourself, the world ceases to be at war with you. The hidden mechanism, once a rogue engine driving you toward destruction, becomes an instrument of supreme creation. Your external reality begins to organize itself around your newly integrated psychological structure. People respond to you differently. An unspoken magnetic authority radiates from you. Circumstances align with eerie precision. This is not magic. It is the natural consequence of a unified psyche. When the king reclaims his throne, the kingdom naturally falls into order. To master your inner world completely is to seize control of the hidden mechanism. It is the realization that the world is entirely malleable, bending not to the force of your physical labor, but to the gravity of your psychological wholeness. Stop fighting the shadows on the wall. Turn around, face the fire, and take the mechanism into your own hands. Command the depths of your own abyss and watch as everything above ground silently, inevitably obeys. You have been sold a lie of purity, a fragile, comforting deception that whispers in your ear, urging you to be good, to be compliant, to carve out the darkest parts of your nature and bury them beneath a veneer of civilized obedience. Society demands a polished surface. It asks you to smile, to yield, to file down your teeth so that others might feel safe in your presence. But in your desperate attempt to be harmless, you have made yourself weak. You have surrendered the very engine of your sovereignty. Carl Jung, the master architect of the deep psyche, understood a terrifying and unshakable truth about human nature. A tree cannot allow its branches to reach up toward heaven unless its roots reach down into the agonizing depths of hell. This is the realm of the shadow. It is the locked basement of your mind, the subterranean dungeon where you have chained the aggressor, the selfish beast, the ruthless conqueror, and the unapologetic tyrant that lives within your blood. You were taught to fear these forces. You were told they make you evil. But Jung's most ruthless principle dictates something entirely different. A man who is incapable of doing harm is not a good man. He is merely a victim waiting to happen. True morality, true authority, and true mastery over reality belong only to the one who possesses a monstrous capacity for destruction, yet chooses to keep it sheathed by the iron grip of his conscious will. Step into the damp, echoing corridors of your inner world. Feel the chill in the air. As you descend the stone steps of your psyche, you will hear the rattling of chains. These are the repressed fragments of your identity, the rage you swallowed when you were disrespected, the raw, primal ambition you hid because it made others uncomfortable, the cold, calculating selfishness that is required to protect your own boundaries. You have locked them away in the dark, starving them, hoping they would die. They do not die. They fester. When you deny your shadow, it does not disappear. It operates behind your back. It bleeds out in passive aggression, in sudden bursts of uncontrollable temper, in self-sabotage, and in the quiet, gnawing anxiety of a life lived as a subordinate. You become a puppet to the very darkness you refuse to acknowledge. By refusing to look at the monster, you allow the monster to direct your fate from the shadows. To master your inner world completely, so completely that the external world has no choice but to obey, you must perform the most terrifying act of psychological alchemy. You must walk down into that dungeon. You must take the heavy iron key of your conscious awareness, place it into the rusted lock, and turn it. You must unchain the beast. This is not a surrender to chaos. It is a coronation. When you look your shadow in the eyes, you will realize it is not a demon sent to destroy you. It is your displaced power. It is the life force you were too cowardly to wield. Imagine taking the unyielding aggression of your shadow and forging it into an unbreakable boundary. Suddenly, you no longer need to raise your voice to command respect. Your mere presence radiates a silent, chilling capacity for ruthlessness that others instinctively feel. Imagine taking your repressed greed and refining it into a laser-focused, unapologetic ambition that cuts through obstacles like a heavy iron sword. Imagine harvesting your capacity for cruelty and transmuting it into the cold, surgical objectivity required to cut away toxic relationships, bad investments, and dead habits without a single drop of hesitation or remorse. This is the alchemy of integration. The king who sits on his throne in the center of the mind must not be a gentle, naive figurehead. He must be a sovereign who knows the exact weight of the sword he holds. He must be a ruler who has invited his darkest generals to the war council. When the conscious mind and the shadow strike a pact, the psyche becomes whole, impenetrable, and terrifyingly dense. When you achieve this integration, the external world alters its behavior around you. People, circumstances, and opportunities respond to the hidden architecture of your psyche. They can sense whether you are fractured or whole. When you walk into a room carrying the fully integrated weight of your shadow, you project an aura of dangerous calm. You do not need to threaten. Your capacity for destruction is implicitly understood and deeply respected. You do not need to beg for what you want. Your sovereign entitlement is written into the very posture of your existence. The world is a mirror, reflecting the exact degree of mastery you hold over your internal kingdom. If you are at war with yourself, if you are terrified of your own depths, the world will present you with endless terrors and insurmountable obstacles. But the moment you sit upon the throne of your psyche, wearing the crown of both your highest virtues and your darkest, most ruthless instincts, the rebellion ends. Everything obeys. The chaotic winds of circumstance die down. The predators of the social hierarchy lower their eyes in your presence. The doors that were sealed shut slowly creak open, yielding to the gravitational pull of a soul that has conquered its own abyss. Do not be afraid of the dark. Master it. Consume it. Let it coat the walls of your mind in raw umber and charcoal black, framing the golden light of your supreme, unchallengeable authority. Most men fight the mirror. They strike blindly at the glass, bloodied and exhausted, wondering why the reflection never yields. They battle their circumstances, their enemies, their financial ruin, and their social standing, entirely oblivious to the chilling reality of human existence. The external world is nothing but a delayed echo of the internal empire. Welcome to Chapter 5, Strategic Dominance. Here we leave behind the comforting illusions of luck, fate, and external victimization. We step into the cold, unforgiving light of Carl Jung's most ruthless psychological principle. Jung warned us, with a quiet and terrifying certainty, that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. To the uninitiated, this is a philosophical musing. To the master, it is the ultimate blueprint for absolute power. Strategic dominance is not about exerting brute force upon the world. Brute force is the weapon of the weak, the desperate, and the uncalibrated. True dominance is a silent, internal alchemy. It is the chilling realization that if you master the architecture of your own psyche, if you conquer the warring factions of your mind and unify them under a single, unbreakable will, the external world has no choice but to bend, conform, and obey. Imagine your mind as a vast, ancient throne room. For most of your life, the throne has sat empty. In the absence of a true king, the inner court is in chaos. The coward, the tyrant, the addict, the victim, and the hedonist all fight for the crown. They pull the levers of your behavior, sabotage your ambitions, and project their chaos onto your reality. When you experience failure, rejection, or defeat in the physical world, it is rarely due to external superiority. It is a direct result of an internal mutiny. The world simply agrees with the dominant archetype currently holding your mind hostage. To achieve strategic dominance, you must walk into that dark throne room, wade through the shattered marble of your false beliefs, and take your seat. You must become the absolute, unquestioned sovereign of your internal space. This requires a psychological ruthlessness that most are too cowardly to endure. You cannot kill your inner demons. Jung taught us that what you resist persists. Instead, you must subjugate them. The shadow, that dark, repressed reservoir of your aggression, your selfishness, and your primal hunger, must not be hidden away in the dungeons. A king who fears his own shadow is already overthrown. You must bring the shadow into the court. You must bind it in heavy gold chains, not to imprison it, but to harness it as your most loyal and terrifying hound. When your aggression is integrated and controlled, it ceases to be a destructive force and becomes an aura of quiet, dangerous authority. People do not need to see you draw your sword. They only need to know that you are deeply capable of violence, yet possess the supreme discipline to keep the blade sheathed. Once the inner court is unified, the law of correspondences is activated. As within, so without. This is where the magic of strategic dominance manifests. When there is absolutely no contradiction in your psyche, when your conscious desires and your unconscious drives are perfectly aligned, you move through reality with a terrifying lack of friction. You stop negotiating with the world. You begin to dictate to it. Consider the chessboard. The novice stares at the board, reacting to the opponent's moves, sweating over the immediate threats, forever trapped in a state of defense. The master does not look at the board in front of him. He looks at the board in his mind. He has already played out the variations, absorbed the losses, and engineered the checkmate in the silent theater of his own psyche. By the time his hand touches the physical piece, the game is already over. The movement of the wood is merely a formality. This is how you must approach your life. Your career, your relationships, your empire. These are not external battles to be fought. They are internal realities to be solidified. If you demand respect from the world, you must first violently eradicate the parts of yourself that tolerate disrespect. If you demand wealth, you must first execute the inner beggar who believes he is unworthy of the gold. You must construct the reality within the dark, quiet chambers of your mind with such high-fidelity realism, such undeniable conviction that the physical world is forced to catch up. Do not mistake this for mere positive thinking. Positive thinking is a fragile, desperate plea to the universe. Strategic dominance is a cold, calculated command. It requires you to sit in the darkness, illuminated only by the warm, flickering candlelight of your ambition and the cold, unfeeling rim light of your logic. You must observe your fears, your anxieties, and your weaknesses with the detached eye of a sovereign judging a treasonous subject. You do not panic, you do not bargain. You simply realign them to serve the grand strategy. When you achieve this state, a profound and eerie silence falls over your life. The frantic need to prove yourself vanishes. The desperation to control others evaporates. Why would you need to control others when you have mastered the source code of reality itself? People will begin to gravitate toward you, inexplicably drawn to the immense gravity of a unified mind. Opportunities will unlock as if ancient, heavy doors are swinging open at your mere approach. Your enemies will falter, unnerved by the chilling calmness with which you observe their futile attacks. They will call you lucky. They will call you gifted. They will wonder what secret alliances you have forged in the dark. Let them wonder. They are still fighting the mirror, completely unaware that you are the one holding the glass. You have stopped trying to conquer the world. You have conquered yourself, completely and ruthlessly, and in doing so, you have left the world with only one option: absolute obedience. The throne is yours. The internal kingdom is secure. Now, let the external empire rise. There is a threshold in the labyrinth of the psyche where the weeping stops, where the frantic negotiations with the universe fall utterly silent. You have descended into the subterranean vaults of your own mind. You have faced the shadow, cataloged your deepest terrors, and stripped the illusions from your fragile ego. But awareness alone is a scholar's prize. It is not the crown of a sovereign. To merely understand your inner world is to read the map. To master it, to subjugate it so entirely that reality itself bows to your gravity, requires an evolution far more brutal. Welcome to the Stoic transformation. Carl Jung understood a terrifying, ruthless principle. The external world is nothing but a mirror, a heavy, unyielding reflection of your internal architecture. If your inner world is a chaotic democracy of competing fears, desires, and reactive emotions, the outer world will manifest as a series of tragic accidents and overwhelming storms. People will disrespect you. Circumstances will break you. Reality will treat you as a victim because, psychologically, you have already volunteered for the role. But what happens when the inner world becomes a fortress of obsidian? What happens when you forge a mind so chillingly still, so absolutely governed by an iron will, that nothing can penetrate its walls without your explicit permission? Everything obeys. This is the alchemy of the Stoic transformation. It is not the numbness of the coward who hides from pain, nor is it the suppression of emotion. Suppression is a ticking bomb. It is the act of a weak ruler locking a rebellion in the dungeon. True Stoic mastery, married to Jungian depth, is the total metabolization of emotion. It is taking the burning coals of betrayal, loss, and anxiety and forging them into the cold, heavy steel of a sovereign will. You do not deny the storm. You simply refuse to let it cross the threshold of your inner citadel. Imagine a medieval king seated in the center of a grand, dimly lit hall. Outside, the tempest rages. Enemies gather at the gates. The treasury is threatened. The peasants whisper of ruin. The weak king panics, pacing the floors, reacting to every messenger, his mind a slave to the shifting winds of the outside world. But the master, the sovereign who has conquered his own psyche, sits motionless on his throne of raw umber and patina gold. He watches the panic. He feels the tension in the air. Yet his pulse does not quicken. His breathing remains slow, deep, and authoritative. He knows the most dangerous weapon in any room is absolute stillness. When you achieve this level of internal dominion, a profound shift occurs in the fabric of reality. The universe is entirely predatory. It tests for weakness, probing the boundaries of your psyche. When it pushes against you and feels a desperate reactive flinch, it pushes harder. It consumes you. But when the universe pushes against you and meets a wall of solid, unfeeling marble, when it realizes that you no longer need its validation, fear its rejection, or beg for its mercy, it stops. It recalibrates. And then, slowly, instinctively, it begins to bend around you. This is the paradox of power. The moment you stop needing the world to obey, it begins to obey. To achieve this, you must enact a ruthless self-governance. You must kill the part of you that cries out for fairness. Fairness is an illusion peddled to the weak to keep them docile. The master understands that the world owes him nothing, and in return, he gives the world no power over his emotional state. When an ally betrays you, you do not shatter. You observe the betrayal as a cold, clinical data point. You adjust your chessboard. When financial ruin looms, you do not despair. You look at the collapsing structures of your life with the detached eye of an architect planning a new, grander foundation. You must view your own mind as an empire, and right now you are putting down a rebellion. Every time you allow someone else's words to make you angry, you are handing them the crown. Every time you allow a setback to plunge you into depression, you are abdicating the throne to a peasant circumstance. The Stoic transformation demands that you reclaim the heavy gold chain of command. You become the immovable mover. You dictate the weather of your own soul. In this state of deep, chilling authority, your very presence becomes a psychological weight. People sense the immovable object. They look into your eyes and do not see the frantic, easily manipulated desires of an ordinary human. They see the deep crimson and charcoal shadows of a king who has stared into the abyss and tamed it. They sense that they cannot trigger you, they cannot manipulate you, and they cannot break you. And because human nature instinctively submits to true, unbothered power, they will yield. They will seek your guidance, crave your approval, and align with your will. simply because you are the most solid object in their chaotic world. You wear the crown of thorns, but it no longer makes you bleed. It is hardened into patina gold. You sit centrally in the cathedral of your mind, flanked by the marble statues of ancient philosophers who whisper the eternal truth. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The transformation is complete when the silence of your inner world becomes louder than the noise of the external world. You are no longer a participant in the frantic drama of existence. You are its director. You have mastered the inner realm completely. The shadow is your enforcer, your intellect is your strategist, and your will is the absolute law. Now, step out into the world. Speak softly. Move slowly. Demand nothing, but expect everything. Watch how the sea parts. Watch how everything obeys. We have reached the precipice. You have walked through the corridors of your own mind, peeling back the layers of deception, dismantling the comforting lies you have told yourself for decades. You have stared into the abyss of your own shadow and learned the architecture of your hidden desires. But knowledge without execution is merely another form of intellectual cowardice. This is the 7th and final chapter. This is the reckoning. Here, at the edge of the abyss, Carl Jung's most ruthless principle awaits you, stripped of all poetic comfort and laid bare in its terrifying absolute truth. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Listen to those words carefully. Let them echo in the cold, cavernous halls of your mind. Fate is a lie. It is a mythical scapegoat invented by the weak to excuse their lack of dominion. The tragedies of your life, the cyclical failures, the betrayals, the invisible walls you constantly hit, these are not the whims of a cruel universe. They are the echoes of your own unmastered psyche. Your unconscious mind is a dark, sprawling empire, and if you do not sit upon its throne as a sovereign ruler, it will overthrow you. It will project its chaos onto the external world, and you will spend your entire life fighting phantoms, believing you are a victim of circumstance when, in reality, you are a victim of yourself. To master your inner world completely is not a peaceful endeavor. It is a brutal, bloodless coup. It requires a chilling, surgical detachment from your own ego. You must become the judge, the executioner, and the king of your internal landscape. This is the ruthless principle. Most people seek external power, wealth, status, influence over others, because they are utterly powerless within. They build towering fortresses in the physical world to hide the fact that their internal world is a slum, overrun by the feral dogs of unhealed trauma, repressed anger, and unacknowledged fear. But external power is fragile. It can be taken by a turn of the market, a change in public opinion, or the ravages of time. Internal sovereignty, however, is absolute. Once you conquer the labyrinth of your own mind, no man, no system, and no tragedy can unseat you. Understand the mechanics of this mastery. When you finally stop running from your shadow and instead turn around, grab it by the throat, and drag it into the light of consciousness, a profound alchemical shift occurs. You cease to be a pawn on the chessboard of reality. You become the player. The external world is nothing more than a mirror reflecting your internal state. When your inner world is fractured, chaotic, and ruled by unseen forces, your external life will be a mirror of that exact chaos. But when you impose an iron will upon your psyche, when you integrate your darkness, command your impulses, and align your conscious and unconscious minds into a single, terrifyingly focused spearhead, the external world has no choice but to obey. It obeys because you are no longer projecting your insecurities onto it. You no longer react blindly to the provocations of others. You walk through the world with the calm, lethal grace of an apex predator. People sense this. The universe senses this. Synchronicities begin to align in your favor, not by magic, but because your perception is finally clear enough to see the pathways to victory that were obscured by your own internal fog. Obstacles dissolve because you no longer subconsciously desire them. Enemies step aside because they recognize the immovable weight of a mind that has conquered itself. You bend reality because you have stopped allowing reality to bend you. But here is the final warning. This path is irreversible. Once you open the door to complete self-mastery, you can never again play the victim. You can never again blame your parents, your society, your enemies, or the gods for your failures. The comforting blanket of ignorance is burned to ash. From this moment forward, every defeat is your own. Every victory is your own. The crown of sovereignty is incredibly heavy, forged in the fires of radical responsibility. Most men and women would rather remain slaves to their illusions than bear the crushing weight of absolute freedom. They prefer the familiar chains of their unmastered minds over the terrifying open plains of total autonomy. You must ask yourself right now, as you stand in the quiet dark of your own consciousness, are you prepared to pay the price? The price is the death of who you thought you were. The price is the sacrifice of your excuses. The price is isolation, for you will no longer relate to the sleepwalking masses who complain about the weather of their own making. You will stand apart, a solitary figure radiating the quiet, dangerous aura of a mind fully realized. The throne of your psyche stands before you. It is carved from cold marble, resting in the shadows of your deepest self. It is empty. For years, you have let ghosts and parasites sit upon it. You have let fear dictate your moves. You have let unhealed wounds govern your reactions. No more. The time for introspection is over. The time for dominion has arrived. Step forward out of the dark. Ascend the steps. Take the crown of thorns and gold and place it upon your own head. Command your inner world with ruthless, unwavering authority and watch as the external world falls to its knees in obedience. The game is yours to control. Master yourself and everything else will follow.